I can't remember a time growing up when I wasn't gently reminded that I came second. There wasn't a family announcement, no scene with raised voices. It was a slow drip, a look here, a sigh there, a rule bent in one direction but not the other. My younger sister Brooke always needed more attention, more patience, more excuses, and I was expected to give, to adjust, to be the one who could take it. If she broke something of mine, my mother, Diane, would breathe out like it hurt her and say, "She's younger, Catherine. Let it go." If Brooke wanted a toy I was using, my mother would meet my eyes with a soft warning. "You know how she gets. Just let her have it." So I did. Because I was older, because I knew better, because they taught me that Brooke's feelings mattered more than fairness. It didn't happen in one blow. That's what I wish people understood. It was a slow build, a careful setting of the stage where my needs were always optional. The pattern started simple, then grew teeth. What began with toys and tantrums became rules and expectations that were never equal. I wasn't just the older sister. I was the buffer, the fixer, the one who could take the hit so things stayed calm. Piece by piece, I learned to move around Brooke's moods like weather. I learned to swallow words, to step aside before a fight started, to smile when I lost. And the worst part? I believed it made me strong. I carried that story into adulthood like a badge. If I held everything together without complaint, maybe they'd finally see me. They didn't. By 16, that quiet agreement had become law. If I wanted anything past the basics, a phone, decent clothes, even a little independence, I had to pay for it myself. So I picked up weekend shifts, then after-school hours. I stocked shelves, wiped tables, ran registers, and learned to keep my head down. When Brooke turned 16, the rules changed. She didn't fill out a single job application. On her birthday, Rick, our dad, handed her car keys. Diane placed a credit card in her palm like a promise. "Focus on school, sweetheart. We'll handle the rest." Those 4 words never showed up in my life. We'll handle it. For college, I applied. To everything with a deadline and a form. I still came up short, so I borrowed. I rented the cheapest room I could find, ate boxed pasta most nights, and cobbled together 2 part-time jobs just to keep going. I was tired in a way that didn't show, and no one asked. Brooke got into a private university. They paid for all of it: tuition, housing, groceries, utilities. She lived in a bright apartment with a balcony and never once had to rush from my class to a shift because she had bills due. The one time I asked my mother about it, carefully, she said, "Calm as ever, Brooke isn't as strong as you, Catherine. She needs more help." That line made everything else make sense. It didn't matter how hard it was for me to stand up. What mattered was that I could. So they leaned. When Brooke ran out of money, they covered her. When she totaled her car, they replaced it. When she maxed out her card on things she didn't need, Rick paid it off without a flinch. When I got hit with a sudden medical bill, the kind that makes your heart slam, I called home. Diane sighed. "I wish we could help, honey, but things are tight right now. You'll figure it out." I always figured it out, and they always let me. Eventually, I stopped asking for help or attention or even to be seen. I let myself be the one who didn't need anything. It made their lives easier. It made me disappear. When Dan Myers proposed, I didn't cry. I laughed. Not because I didn't care, but because I hadn't expected anyone to choose me with that kind of certainty. It was a quiet moment on a rainy day, just us, simple and real. For a few weeks, I let myself warm up to the idea that my life could be mine, that I could be the center of something without guilt. Then the wedding planning started, and old patterns slid in like they'd been waiting by the door. Diane began to sigh in that practiced way, mentioned the costs of flowers or food, and her voice went soft, almost careful. Weddings are so expensive now. Such a shame to put so much into one day. She wasn't telling me not to do it. She wanted me to feel bad for wanting it. Rick went quiet but strategic. "Things are tight for us lately. Brooke's had a tough year. You know how it is." I nodded. I've always nodded. But something in my chest went rigid, and I started holding my breath without knowing it. Brooke didn't hide her feelings. She rolled Her eyes, when the wedding was mentioned, mocked bridesmaid dresses, scoffed at registries. When I cried at a cake tasting, she joked that I was acting like a princess. What hurt wasn't the words. It was the way her face tightened when someone gave me their full attention, like my happiness was stealing air from her. Dan saw it before I did. One night, while I was lost in the seating chart, he watched me for a long moment and said, "They're going to try something." I looked up. "Who?" "Your parents." I tried to laugh it off. "Come on. Selfish. Sure. But not our wedding." He didn't argue. He took a sealed envelope from his jacket and set it down. Just in case. I didn't ask what was in it. The shape of it sat in my mind. The morning of the wedding was so calm it felt like a trick. Clear sky. Flowers delivered early. My dress fit as if it had been waiting for me. For the first time in years, I allowed the idea that this was mine, that I could have something bright. Diane arrived with a smile and a cup of tea, smoothing my hair like I was a little girl again. "You look lovely, Catherine. Truly." Even Brooke stayed quiet, which felt like progress. The ceremony was tender and careful. Our vows carried on held breath, our eyes lit with the moment. The room felt soft with roses and champagne and, for once, approval. My mother clapped. My father danced with me. Brooke sat near the window and didn't complain when the music picked up. It was everything I hadn't known I wanted, to be seen and not scolded for it. Just before walking down the aisle, I found a small card tucked into my bouquet. Ivory paper. My name in my mother's handwriting. "No matter what today, you are our daughter and you are loved, Mom." It was vague and simple, and it broke something open anyway. Maybe she saw me. Maybe, just for once, I wasn't the strong one who never needed anything. I let myself lean into the hope. We'd just finished the first dance when the band took a short break. The room slipped into chatter and soft glass clinks. My cheeks were warm, my feet hummed from spinning with Dan under the lights. That's when Diane touched my arm. Her smile was a shade too bright, the one she used when she was about to say something I wouldn't like but thought I might accept. "Come with me a moment." We stepped into a quieter corner near the bar where the candles were low and the air felt still. She took my hands in both of hers and squeezed like she was giving me good news. "You look radiant. It's a lovely evening." Then she paused carefully. "We're keeping your gift money. Brooke needs it more than you do." For a beat, I thought I'd misheard, but her smile told me I had it right. "I'm sorry?" She sighed, as if it hurt her to explain. "Sweetheart, you don't need it. You have Dan. You're building a life. Brooke's struggling. It's only fair. She gets a little help." My fingers went cold. The room around us softened to a low hum. I was still holding her hands. I hated that. "That money isn't yours," I said, steady and flat. Her smile held, but it tightened. "We're your parents," she said, as if that explained everything. "In this family, we help each other." That's when I understood. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. This was the clean line of what she believed. I was a resource, Brooke was the priority, and even on my wedding day, I was expected to hand over my joy and call it love. I didn't hear Dan walk up. I only felt the room shift when his voice landed. Quiet. Measured. Final. "Good thing we planned for this." Diane blinked. "What do you mean?" Dan reached into his jacket and brought out the envelope he'd shown me weeks before. He held it between two fingers and offered it to her. "Go ahead, open it." Rick joined us, arms crossed, jaw hard. Diane slid a nail under the flap and drew out a stack of papers. She read the first page, then slowed. The stillness in her face told me everything. Rick leaned in. "What is this?" Dan's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "A notarized legal declaration," he said, "signed 3 weeks ago. It states that all wedding gifts, cash or otherwise, belong to Catherine and me. Any attempt to hold, redirect, or access those funds without our consent is theft. We will prosecute." The silence went heavy. Diane looked at me, not with softness, not with that careful patience, but with something I'd never seen in her. Doubt. "You wouldn't take us to court," she whispered. "We're family." Dan's smile was small and sure. I would, and he would. I felt it like a line drawn clean across the floor. Rick worked his jaw and said nothing. I didn't speak either. I didn't have to. For once, I wasn't smoothing edges or apologizing in advance. I stood with my husband and let the truth sit where it belonged. Brooke's heels struck the floor as she rushed in, her face flushed and her mouth tight. She looked from the papers to Dan, then to me. This isn't fair, she snapped, loud enough to cut through the low music. You're married, Kate. You don't need that money. You have a husband, a future, everything. I have nothing. Her voice climbed each sentence higher, thinner. I'm struggling and you don't care. I watched her and for the first time I didn't feel heat. I felt something colder and clearer. She meant it. She wasn't playing or plotting. She truly believed she had a claim to what was mine, my money, my moment, because that's how it had always worked. Her need always weighed more than my boundary. Her panic, even when it was her own making, always outranked my stability. I had spent years hoping she'd grow out of it, that one day she'd step into her life and carry it herself. Watching. Her now, shoulders shaking and fists tight like a child refused a treat, I knew she was not going to change. And I was done waiting. Rick moved so fast it startled even Diane. His face went red and hard. I have never been so ashamed of you, he said, spitting the words like they might pin me where I stood. I held his eyes, calm and steady in a way I'd never allowed myself to before. The shame slid off. I didn't say it out loud, but the silence said everything. You don't get to be ashamed of the daughter you never protected. Dan stepped half a pace closer, his voice low and clean as a blade that didn't need to swing. If you try to take 1 cent from us, we'll see you in court. No anger, just fact. It was enough. Diane's lips parted like she might try one more angle, then closed again. Brooke sobbed behind her, louder now, but no one turned toward her. Even Rick went still. For the first time, they understood the math had changed. There would be no pleading or guilt or history to lean on. No shaping me back into the girl who gave and nodded and smiled. There was only this: a daughter who no longer needed their approval, a husband who would stand with her, and a line they would not cross. We walked away. The music grew bright again behind us, voices rising to cover the crack they'd left. Dan's hand was warm and certain in mine. With each step, my spine felt taller. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Then a hand closed around my wrist, familiar and shaking. Catherine. My mother's voice was small, barely sound. I turned. The woman in front of me looked nothing like the one who had always been composed. Her eyes were wide. Her mask had slipped. You don't mean this, she whispered. We're your family. I let silence sit on her shoulders. I let her feel the weight of her own words. When I finally spoke, it wasn't loud or cruel. It was steady. You were never my family. You were Brooke's. The words landed like a quiet strike. Her hand fell from my wrist. Her mouth opened, then closed. I watched something in her fold in on itself, quiet and complete. She looked at Dan with disbelief, like she was seeing a future she hadn't planned for. She had never pictured this ending, me leaving and not leaving the door cracked. We kept moving, step by step, past the voices and the wreckage and the years I had spent making myself small. Diane called after me again, breathless. Brooke's voice rose into a shriek, how I was ruining everything, how she deserved more, how I had stolen the light. Rick swore low and dark, pride fraying. It all spun together, pleading, rage, old habits, the storm they knew how to make. But I wasn't standing in the middle of it anymore. They weren't talking to me. They were talking to the version of me they built, the girl who apologized, who softened, who stayed. She was gone. Dan squeezed my hand once. Quiet, steady, enough. I walked forward. I didn't need a final line, a dramatic ending, or even an apology I'd long stopped expecting. Some stories don't end in a fight. They end in a silence so complete that it leaves no echo. In that quiet, I found peace. There isn't a next chapter with them. No revenge, no dramatic return. Just a woman who finally chose herself and walked away for good.